name's Owen Finch, and I'm the head of the Board of Adjustments for the town of Duck. We're here today to hear an application submitted by Edward J. Brooks on behalf of Wright Ventures for an appeal. And I'm going to recuse myself and turn this over to Tom O'Brien, our vice.
Okay.
And I'll be in the back.
Don't go far. Not having gone through one of these before, I've asked Ben Gallup if he'll help us through it and run this portion of it.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I'm glad to do that. We're here today to decide an appeal submitted by Edward J. Brooks III on behalf of Wright Ventures, LLC, regarding the zoning administrator's determination that the recent repainting of the structure at 1242 Duck Road was inconsistent with Town Code Section 156.11C, Design Standards for Buildings. Bear with me a second and let me, particularly since we have audience here who are are not with a party but are in the audience, people who are members of the public. Let me provide a brief overview of the Board of Adjustment for those who may not be familiar with how it functions and to remind those who are familiar with these board members. It's a formal quasi-judicial board which operates under strict rules and procedures which are set forth by statute in a similar fashion to a court of law. The board must make its decisions based on substantial, competent, and material factual evidence presented under oath at this hearing. They're not strictly bound by the courtroom rules of evidence, but we are guided by those rules and the general statutes as to what evidence is admissible. Hearsay, generalizations, speculation, and most lay witness opinions may be subject to objections precluding them from being considered. So we ask that you restrict your testimony to only factual information that is relevant to the limited issues under consideration. Testimony by all witnesses must be given under oath. All witnesses must go to the lectern and identify themselves in order to provide their testimony. No other discussion by the audience is allowed. Any physical evidence presented will be made a part of the proceedings and be retained by the board. Parties may object to testimony and cross-examine one another's witnesses and members of the general public who provide testimony. Parties will be provided an opportunity for brief closing arguments. If you have an attorney, then questioning, objections, and argument must come from your attorney. For the board, it's imperative, as you've already seen, Mr. Finch had a conflict that required him to recuse himself from the board today. But it's imperative this board participate, no member of this board participate in a vote on any quasi-judicial matter in a manner which would affect it or would violate an affected person's constitutional rights to an impartial decision maker. Those rights would be violated by someone having a fixed opinion prior to the hearing that's not susceptible to change, by undisclosed ex parte communications, by having a close familial, business, or other associational relationship with an affected person or a financial interest in the outcome of the matter. Previously undisclosed ex parte communications, that means communications with town staff or communications with the applicant about the case, which have not caused you to develop a fixed opinion, may be cured through the disclosure of facts or information obtained on the record, basically by telling what you talked to them about. So that gives the parties an opportunity to refute whatever you may have heard. Is there anyone on the board who's sitting who has any reason to have any conflict other than Mr. Finch, who's already recused himself? No. Great. So the process for the hearing, I don't expect any motions. I don't expect any intervening parties. So we'll have the staff do their presentation first, and everybody will get a chance to ask them questions. The board will get a chance to ask them questions. Mr. Brooks' attorney will get to ask them questions if he has any questions. And once staff is done with their evidence and testimony, we will move on to the applicant's evidence and testimony, and we'll go through the same process with them. Following that, the general public will be allowed to present testimony under oath. I will caution that, again, that it's not a venting session. It's a session about facts that are relevant to the consideration of the ordinance at hand, and you won't be able to, the general public won't be able to question witnesses. Only parties will be able to do that. Once the evidence is completed, the parties, through their attorneys, will have an opportunity to make brief arguments summarizing their positions. And following that, the board will deliberate on the issues in the case and attempt to reach a decision whether to reverse or affirm wholly or partly or modify the decision that's been appealed from. And the board can make any order, requirement, determination that ought to be made. The board has all the powers of the official. I believe it was Mr. Hurd who made the lower decision. So you have all the powers that he had. You can act as he could have acted. So now we'll go on to the evidentiary hearing. Ms. Womble, I assume you will be representing staff.
I will.
And let me see if I can remember Jeff's last name. Roth. I can't say it. But Mr. Jeff will be representing Mr. Brooks, and so we'll start with anyone who wishes to give testimony. If you can go ahead and come forward so we can have witnesses sworn in. It's easier to do all that at one time.
Where's this stand?
You need to come over so you can put your, or maybe bring the Bible over toward y'all. Yeah. Yes. Mr. Braithwaite, you need to go over there where you can put your hand on there. Thank you all very much. So now we'll open the hearing and we'll let staff move forward with their presentation.
It should be. Right next to the podium, but give my presentation from here. There's no particular reason why I need that there. So I'm going to present staff's ordinance and our decision and the rationale behind that. And I use the word "our" because although technically it comes from me, I do have Sandy Cross, who's our senior planner, with me, and she is the one who's actually our eyes and ears in the field as it related to this issue. So first of all, just for the record, I did want to point out that we rendered a final appealable decision on February the 17th. The applicant applied within the appropriate time frame 2 weeks later on March the 1st. You'll note in the staff report, it gives the dates that this public hearing was advertised in the paper. Notices were sent. A sign posted on the property, and also it was posted on the town's website and here at Town Hall. All that was done within the appropriate legal time frame. So for the record, I just want to have that on. Your attorney has outlined the requested appeal that the applicant is making, and really what we're talking about boils down to paint colors. And so this is an unusual one for staff and the board, but while we have some sympathy with the appellant in this case, we also see a real precedent if this is set and allowed. So staff, after receiving some comments and noticing the building in question, conducting an inspection of the property at, commonly known as Tommy's Market at 1242 Duck Road. And we did find that the paint colors that building had been recently painted were not consistent with the standard that reads paint colors shall be of low reflectance, subtle, neutral, or earth tone colors, or shall relate to natural colors within the town generally. So we found that it was inconsistent with that standard, in our opinion, and to be honest, that's one of the things that makes this a really unique decision, is that there is an element of subjectivity when you're looking at paint colors and determining whether they meet that standard. However, we felt pretty strongly that this color did not meet that, so we did make that decision and informed the applicant, or appellant in this case, the property owner, as well as the new business owners, of that decision. So the justification for that decision, as I noted, we found it inconsistent with the subtle, neutral, or tone color thing, but we also did want to highlight a couple reasons why that's important to us as a town, and one of which is that we've consistently enforced this. In this instance, the applicant or the appellant did not come to us prior to painting to say, hey, we want to paint it, here's the color. No, we do not require a permit. And that's, where one of the challenges comes in. So they were not required to come to us beforehand, but they are required to comply with that standard, even though a permit isn't required. So in this instance, we have, over the years have had dozens of different properties and property owners come in and talk with us about colors before they repainted, and we've worked with them. We've had instances where someone was going to paint something, very, very bright and bold color, and we informed them that that wasn't allowed, and they came back with something different that we did agree on. And so one of the issues that we see with this would be an issue of consistency. So we've enforced this on dozens of properties over the years, but, so it's hard for us to say, okay, we'll let you do it, but we didn't let these others. And then secondly, pardon me, we didn't find any other examples of similar colors for buildings, throughout the town, or and to us, again, it's a matter of interpretation, but we did not find this to be a natural or earth tone color. So from that standpoint, we also found that it was inconsistent with that section that I mentioned earlier. We have some information in your staff report that comments on, the applicant in their application made several comments, and I did want to touch on those. The first of which is that they mentioned that the color matches the original Tommy's blue color of the market building. So first of all, we have no evidence or, knowledge that that was ever the case. So, first of all, we don't know if it was the case, but even if it was, it's irrelevant. In other words, our ordinance doesn't say you can paint a building any color that it was ever painted in the past. It says it has to be subtle, neutral, or tone color. So just because it was painted a certain color in the past doesn't offer the owner the right to repaint it in that way, just like any of our other zoning standards. I mean, you could not come in and build a food line on this property because we have changed the rules and not allow that. And in the same way, we change the rules to, the town council adopted standards that said it has to be a certain color. So secondly, the applicant mentions in their application that the color would naturally soften in the summer sun, and that may be true, it may not be true, I don't know. But if even so, in the meantime, it's still in violation, and we have no way of knowing if and how long that process would take if it happens. Third, the property owner would incur significant expense if the building is required to be repainted, and this is where we're sympathetic to the appellant in this case. However, we do want to note that that could have been avoided had they come in ahead of time. Fourth, that the color is a neutral blue with low reflectance. And again, with the understanding that it's subjective, staff did not make that same finding. We do not think it's a neutral color with low reflectance, but it's more of a bold and vibrant blue, and so that was our interpretation. And lastly, the blue color matches the color of an existing sign on the adjoining Waterfront Shops property. Again, we did not find other similar examples of blue colors on buildings throughout the town, throughout Duck Village. And while there might be a sign that has a background, signs are not subject to the same standard. In other words, you could have a sign that's a different color, but it doesn't mean the building is permitted to be that color. So that is what I wanted to present to you, and I'd be glad to answer any questions, be the appellant or the board members at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. Does anybody on the board have any questions?
Not this time.
Okay.
Not right now.
And Mr. Rother, do you have any questions? Okay. Anything else,
I
Ms.
just would
Womble?
like to note the agenda packet as staff one and have it included in the record, and also note the attachments that are referenced in his report.
And Mr. Vice Chair, I would recommend approval of that.
Does that require a vote?
Not unless someone objects.
Well, I think we're okay with that.
And then I just actually have one question about the attachment, Mr. Hurd, if I could. The attachment 1 that's identified as 1 to your staff report.
Okay.
On the back page, it has a picture of the now current color, the blue. And the picture on the left, is that the color it was immediately preceding the recent painting?
Yes, that was the color of the building immediately prior to the current
Okay, Thank
to the recent painting, yes. Thank you.
That was my only follow-up question.
Great. Any further questions of the board?
Anybody?
And Mr. Rother, you're good. Okay, well, we'll call Mr. Rother and his client, the applicant.
Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for your time and attention today. My name is Jeffrey Ruther. I'm an attorney from Morningstar Law, counsel for Wright Ventures LLC, which is the owner of Tom's Market over at 1232 South Road.
I'm having a little trouble hearing him.
Hey, Ben,
Yes.
just real quick, staff's notified me that an alternate, one of your alternates came in, and I don't know. I just wanted you to, me probably didn't see him sneak in, and I wouldn't have known,
Yep.
so.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead and sit with the board.
I think he was here before staff.
Mr. Flowers has he has
I have the whole package.
a nameplate and,
I apologize.
okay.
Okay, could we just confirm that Mr. Flowers, were you here for staff's presentation?
Thank you.
You were here?
Yes, yeah, I heard the whole thing, yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm here on behalf of Wright Ventures to provide evidence and address a few points in support of its appeal that's before you today. At the outset, I'm going to ask the board to take official notice of the contents of the town's Code of Ordinances, particularly section 156.111C, and to include that section of the code in the record of today's proceedings. I do know that the staff report has just been entered, and I believe that ordinance is excerpted in the staff report. Mr. Gallup, I have another copy that I could provide after the hearing for the record if you don't already have it.
That may make it the easiest for the clerk, just so that she won't have to go and find it. She'll be able to just scan it in and have it there. Would you agree that the relevant portion of it is in the?
Agreed.
And that way you don't have to pass them a copy. I mean, Ms. Womble, if she wants a copy, she can have one, but I don't think the board members need one if the relevant portion of it is in the packet already, unless Ms.
Thank you.
Womble has some objection to that.
I don't have an objection.
I believe the staff report's already been entered. Finally, in a few minutes, I'll be asking Mr. Jay Brooks to testify, and he plans to provide some photographs and documents that, for the board's consideration, that we'll also be asking to be included in today's record. I'm going to be very brief in these opening remarks. I just want to make sure the board understands what the task is for it to decide today. The central issue for the board to decide today is very simple. Does the exterior paint color of Tommy's Market comply with section 156.11C of the town's code? And that section states, paint color shall be of low reflectance, subtle, neutral, or earth tone colors, or shall relate to natural material colors found within the town generally. And importantly, the use of or there, which is disjunctive. If the board finds that the paint color is any one of those things, it must reverse the zoning administrator's determination. We certainly respect the town staff and the zoning administrator's review of this matter, but Wright Ventures respectfully submits that the zoning administrator was incorrect with its decision. We believe that the paint color is of low reflectance, and we also believe that the paint color relates to the color of the ocean and sky here in Duck, which the ocean water is a natural material found within the town generally. Mr. Hurd referenced some things that were open to interpretation and to some subjectivity, and we believe the law dictates that those ambiguities be construed in favor of the free use of land. So I'm going to ask Mr. Jay Brooks to come up and to present his testimony, but at the end of the hearing, I will be asking you to reverse the zoning administrator's decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, very much. I think you really effectively addressed each of the points we wanted to raise. Today, I think the two central issues are Why do we have ordinances? To preserve the character and protect our community. We don't want carnival, garish colors changing the look and feel of our town as we know it. And the precedent concern is real. And when Sandy shared this decision, the first thing I did was reach out to Joe and say, Joe, please help me walk through this. This is an evolution from a decision back in October with Olin Finch. Olin is a contractor, a builder for us on many different pieces. My mom lives year-round in Ship's Watch, and when we were visiting in October, I walked across the dune to Olin and said, hey, Olin, as another piece, we are trying to help the business owners of Tommy's sell their business. As you probably well know, my parents ran Tommy's from 93 till 2000, purchasing from Tommy's Graves in 93. And promptly, my dad painted it Tommy's Blue. I'm a little bit bothered, I'll share this with you, Ed, at the lack of recollection of Tommy's Blue. We knew Tommy's Blue. Tommy's Blue existed until 2011, when the Hudgens respectfully asked, do you as landlord mind if we repaint the building to exude natural and organic foods? We wanted to support and encourage our tenant with their business success, so the building was changed in 2011 to the tan that Joe has pointed out. It's really neither here nor there because Joe is spot on. It is moot whether the building was blue before or not. But I do want to address the genuineness of the proceeding, which is, in October, I went to Olin and said, I would like to help the tenants sell the business. I would like to take it back to Tommy's Blue. With my dad having passed, it would be a tribute to him, and it would help re-energize the look and feel that's become tired. I said, however, we will not get that approved with the town of Duck. With my wife present, I was assured we can paint it blue. I was dumbfounded, and this is my fault, my mistake, because I should have followed my gut. Olin called Mark Murray over and said, Mark, do we need any permit to paint in Duck? Is there any restriction? Mark said, no permit, you can paint it any color you want. So I went home and said, Olin, we want to paint it Tommy's Blue. There used to be a color at Pittsburgh Paint called Tommy's Blue. So I called Pittsburgh Paint and I said, I'd like to get that, can't find it anymore. So I think Pittsburgh Paints and the bypass was acquired, and so we did the best we could. We were not intending to be garish. We felt we had selected a genuine blue. Sapphire is a saturated blue. When I called Joe, he kindly shared, it's not that it's blue, it's too bright. And that is very subjective. So I think, all right, I respect that, and I respect the concern for setting precedent, but honestly, what is too bright? Is it a hue? I'm not sure without a better articulation, we can agree, we can all probably come up with a different formulation of what is too bright. Our neighbor, Jim Braithwaite, shared a good point. He said, Jay, the curious thing is you have a 2-story building, of which a story of it is roof. You can't even see your building coming from the south or north, but for the cupola, until you're right on the property. So, you know, I think that our broadcast to the community is not so garish that we are setting some precedent that the doors are open. Moreover, this very process sets precedent that the doors are not open. When I talked to Joe, you kindly shared, you should follow the appeal process. And I said, I respect that, Joe. I agree and concur that we need a process so there is not a perception, anybody can choose to paint a building any color they want. That would not be healthy for our community. I apologize to Joe, I apologize to Sandy, but there was absolutely no presumption or indignance that we can do what we want. My very comment to Mark Murray and Olin Finch was, we cannot do what we want, we need to ask permission. Living in Minneapolis, I relied on their fluency with the community as to what needed to be done. So we proceeded to paint the building in support of the new business purchasers. Sandy sent notice to the former business owners mid-December, what color is the paint? We need to verify it against this ordinance. We sent it right away and did not hear again until February 17th when Joe's team decided this is not in compliance. So if I may, I will suggest, as Jeff has, that I'm a licensed North Carolina attorney, but an attorney who has himself or herself as a client has a fool for a client. So Jeff will check me on this. I think that any language in an ordinance is construed against the drafter, as Jeff shares, in favor in North Carolina for the free use of land. In fact, North Carolina case law is in support of governmental zoning for regulating orientation and use of property, but not aesthetics. That said, I am all in favor of regulating aesthetics. The language of the statute that we're trying, or the ordinance we're trying to focus on, or shall relate to colors, natural color material in the community. It doesn't say natural building colors, so I think this is a distraction to say we looked through the town and couldn't find another blue that was the same blue. I agree with Joe, it's moot and irrelevant about other sign colors, but I think when we look at the naturally occurring colors in the town of Duck, whether it's the evening twilight or the color of the sound in the morning or the Ducktown website from an aerial showing ocean to sound, that you will find the color of Tommy's Market. So I hope...
Can I see those first before you pass them down? Thank you.
And Joe's correct, it's not relevant whether or not the color will fade because it's about the precedent. We are not here wanting or intending, we very much want to prevent precedent that anything should be in here.
He wants, yeah, if we're going to share these with the board, we probably just need to mark them so we can track them, and then, okay, and then,
We're asking.
I did just want to know, kind of understand. It's not so much about authentication, I just want a little context.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I can provide that. So our new business owners,
When and how and who put them in, just so we have some.
so the new business owners live in Dallas and University Park, Dallas, Texas. Tim and Sally Fagans. They have 3 grown boys. The youngest is a junior at Oklahoma, and they're caring for a 98-year-old father. But Tim hails from the Virginia Beach Tidewater area and went to VMI. And he met my cousin Clark Twitty as a fellow VMI grad. And that got us connected to, hey, we want to retire this area. We have investment property. We would like to buy Tommy's and take it back to Tommy's Blue. When Sandy shared this news, the color's been rejected. Tim and Sally have been working hard to clear building inspection. And so in the month or so, the 2 months been here, they took these pictures of the evening twilight sky before dining at Blue Point and the fresh color.
Mr. Brooks, I'm going to walk you through, if it's okay, some of
Yeah.
these photographs. I'm going to start with...
And you're which speed the market to be sure.
You already handed to the board a photograph with a woman in the foreground.
Yeah, as you can see.
Can you describe when that photograph was taken?
2010. So the excitement from the customer base, this woman came into Tommy's and raved to Tim and Sally, and was so grateful. It's back to Tommy's Blue. You can see the sign my dad did.
I'm not trying to be
Okay.
difficult, but we do have to, the rules of evidence do apply to these appeals, and so well, I think that there's some there's requirements that there be inherent reliability, and we're talking about somebody else coming in and affirming the statements. And I'm not trying to be difficult, but so you said that was in 2011?
2010.
2010, okay.
And I'm going to mark it on the back, if it's okay.
That's fine.
It's Exhibit A.
And Joe, I think you can verify that with the awning and the Tommy's Market sign.
And I'm not disputing that it was 2010.
Okay, well, thank you for the correction. I'll mark it Exhibit C. It's okay. I'll mark it Exhibit C for the record. There's a second.
So
Grouping, I think those were a grouping, you could mark them
Correct.
together.
Mark,
Be
you
fine
want to
with
mark
me.
all of C together? Okay.
No, I think it was C, and then the second set was taken separately. They look different.
Yeah, these are modern. I can mark them all as D. Okay. All right.
And I guess that when I was saying context, I just want to know
Yeah.
when they were taken.
Okay, and Mr. Brooks, I'm gonna mark on the back a collection of photographs that you just had as Exhibit D.
Okay.
There are 4 photographs.
Taken by the Fagans.
When were these photographs taken?
End of February, beginning of March.
Okay, of this year.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And the first 3 photographs are of Tommy's Market, correct?
I think they're all of Tommy's Market. And then the evening twilight sky from Blue Point, yes.
The 4th photograph was taken here in the town of Duck?
Correct. Right behind Tommy's. So in the, again, Joe, Sandy, I don't know Jim Gould yet, they did an excellent job of responding to these points. The points that are moved, whether it was blue before or not, or whether we incurred cost, but there was no intent to ignore aesthetics. This procedure here today, I assure you, the entire town of Duck is aware of these proceedings and on notice. You need to better communicate. This is my fault. I am sorry. I should have followed my gut, and regardless of the information, called you, Joe Hurd, called you, Sandy Cross. I certainly know you, and should have done that. Pieces were just moving too quickly, and we are at this point in time. So, I'm sure I'm forgetting 1 or 2 points to share. You probably just at the end of the day have to ask yourself, with procedures like this in place, do you think the floodgates are open that other commercial building owners will be able to willy-nilly destroy the character of this town, painting buildings whatever color they want? I think it's clear that will not succeed. Second, do you find the sapphire blue of Tommy's Market overly garish, too carnival or vaudeville, when it is a saturated night sky blue, is not visible but when you're upon it, and certainly helps a new business owner in the town of Duck re-energize a business that has stagnated over 2.5 years of pandemic. Good for the Fagans. I hope you'll support them. I hope you'll support my wife and I as owners of Tommy's Market. We've been the owners since 2001. Any questions for me? Please, Bob.
I have a question.
Yes.
I want to make sure I understood what you said about your communication, I believe, with Sandy Cross.
Yes.
And,
Can you make sure that the mic is right?
yeah, okay. And it had to do with your communication regarding your selection of the paint color.
Yes.
Did I understand you to say that you had provided that information to Sandy in
Yes.
mid-December?
When she requested it.
When she requested it.
Or may I answer this? I believe this is the email history that will recount Sandy inquiring with Ashton and Taylor Davis were the previous building owners, and Sandy asked.
I was going to ask
Absolutely. Sandy asked Taylor and Ashton back.
Jay, let's get into it. I'm gonna mark it as E.
On December 15th, we've had some inquiry on the paint color. Could you please provide us with the color so we can review it for consistency? And I believe that very same day I responded, it is PPG color number. Sapphire blue. I'm sorry, Sandy, I'm not as good at holding that mic. And my eyes aren't as good as they used to be anymore.
So you provided her at that time the name of the paint and the manufacturer and the number,
That's correct.
but not a sample of what that paint looks like.
At that point, it was being painted.
Okay, it was being painted at that
So we
time.
started with Olin's painter, 1st of December, December 10th, hoping to get it done before year end to close the sale of the business.
And am I correct in my understanding that you received no reply from Sandy until a notification in February that the town staff was taking exception to the color?
That's right.
Okay.
And so, something you mentioned, Mr. Wetzel, on that one,
And Mr. Brooks, do you,
be happy.
Can I see those emails?
Sure.
Thank you.
We're short on lights.
That sounds good.
I'll pass it down.
So the selection of the paint color was intended to choose Tommy's Blue. We provided that color to Sandy. The new business owners followed up a number of times to say, have you had any resolution if there's an issue with this color? On February 17th, Sandy communicated that she and Joe and Jim had met and a decision was it needs to be changed. I don't know. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, Mr. Wetzel.
Just my own clarification. When you provided Sandy with the details about the price, there was no sample of the color given at that point in time. Is that correct?
That's correct. There was not a swatch given to, thank you, Tom.
But if you
The
did have a
building was
swatch,
painted.
you physically had a swatch on the side of the building because it was in process of being
As you can see on the email, and that reminds me of what I was going to say, it says on the email, we've had several inquiries. So at Olin's advice, Olin and Mark said, well, who complained? You should ask. And so when I called Joe, I said, Joe, who has complained about the Tommy's Blue? And Joe kindly shared, I don't know if it was so much a complaint as an inquiry, but that all went to Sandy. And Sandy would know, you should ask her. So I kindly called Sandy and I said, Sandy, did someone come into the office and complain, or was a letter written, or was it an anonymous grouse? And she correctly, fairly said, there is no public record of this. There's no written